spiritual food for thought.
Welcome back to Spiritual Food for Thought. I thank you for joining me once again. In the previous video, I focused on Psalm 116 verse 15 and gave some of my understanding about why it would say, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints." I think that's a very important verse to commit to memory. In fact, as I shared it in the videos, I didn't even open the Bible to read it from there because it's one that I committed to memory probably 2014. If not then certainly 2015. But I committed that to memory years ago. And I want that to be committed to the memory of my children too. I think it's a very important verse as we are eternally minded spiritual people to keep that somewhere in our frame of reference. In the video before that, I talked about Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Why? Well, part of it was their identity and not forgetting who they were, and part of it was what they said to King Nebuchadnezzar when he was threatening their lives. They stood fast in the fact that the one true God whom they served was able to deliver them from the threat that Nebuchadnezzar was presenting to them. But even if God chose not to deliver them, although he was able to, even if he didn't choose to, they were not going to disobey his commands. They were not going to worship the king, worship his idols, worship his gods. They had something better to do, which was to obey the one true God. And in this video, I want to talk about the green light that people give. And I understand it. It's what the world does, and it's what we kind of at our default setting do as well. But I want to bring this to light and help you guys to be aware of it. If you look at an abortion and the situation there, when the law of man reflects the law of God, people are going to fall more in line with the law of God. Okay? If disobeying God, the government here also said was disobedient, less people would be disobedient to God's laws. When abortion was illegal, there were far fewer abortions. Once they gave a green light, then there was many more. Even the Roe versus Wade case, the lady lied about her situation to try to push it a little bit further to make it acceptable. They were trying to find a green light somewhere. Because if there's a green light anywhere, then people have the ability, because there's a green light somewhere, to move that green light and find a green light other places. So we'll push that to the far extreme, right? Abortion. Oh, well, you guys say you want it to be illegal, but what if an underage person is raped and it's incestual? What if they're raped by a close family member and become pregnant? Surely it's okay to kill the child in that situation, right? And what they want to do is go to the farthest part of reality and find, the most intense situation they can and say, see, isn't there a green light? And then once they have that green light, they want to just broaden its spectrum, its span, the amount of ground that it covers. And that's what I find often happens. Here's the deal. I was talking about things like the Sabbath or the dietary law in some recent videos, and people come up and they go, well, what if I'm starving to death and the only food that I have is something that God says is unclean? What should I do then? Well, we can really get into that, and I want to get more into that in the future. But for the purpose of this video, think about it. If God says don't do it, and yet you can prolong your temporary life here, you're not going to be immortal by disobeying God, right? You're not going to live forever here. But you can prolong your temporary life here or prevent your death for a bit by disobeying God. Is that a good thing to do? Well, if we focus on precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints, and we realize when we wake up dead, that'll be the best day of our life, well, we wouldn't be as tempted to do that, would we? But here's the thing. Death is still going to come for you. So do we boil my child and eat them today and boil your child and eat them tomorrow so that way we can live a few more days? People did that. That happened. Was that a good idea? No. All the people who did that are dead right now. None of them are still alive. So they did that to prevent their death, and then they died anyway. It may not have been the next day, but they all died anyway. So if you think about, oh, well, what if I'm housing a bunch of, Jewish orphans and the Nazis are knocking on the door and they want me to tell them if there's Jews here, and if I tell them the truth, they're going to kill me and all of them. It's surely okay to lie then, right? And people look for that green light. Isn't there a green light somewhere? Because if there's a green light somewhere, I mean, Rahab lied, right? Well, as I pointed out in a previous video, Rahab was a biblically ignorant prostitute who served false gods. Okay, up until the time the nation of Israel came in, that's who she was. That's how she lived. So the more we walk with Christ and the further we get away from the world, the more we serve God, the more we should be like a biblically illiterate prostitute? I hope not. But they want to find a green light somewhere. And here's the problem. We can either be people of integrity, people who would stand there like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah and say, look, my God can deliver me from this. But even if he doesn't, he could feed all of us with these couple fish and couple bread, right? But even if he doesn't, we're still not going to disobey him. We're still not going to disobey him. Do not be a double-minded man who is unstable in all his ways. Do not be a person of compromise. And in these intense situations, because, people often push it to the farthest end. They come up with some incredibly intense situation, very unlikely to happen. But they're going to search for that green light. Where is that green light to disobey? Where do I have the opportunity to say, surely it's acceptable to disobey God in this situation? And people will go, oh, well, it's to preserve life. It's to save a life. Is it? Because that death is still going to come. That death is still going to come. And precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. It's trying to find a way to disobey, find a way to compromise, find a way to be a double-minded man, to be an unstable person. And my exhortation, my word of encouragement is, we don't need to do that. We can be faithful unto death. And people are like, oh, well, you don't know what's going to happen. I can guarantee you that the people who've made a mental path of compromise in preparation, and the people who are really dead set that there's a green light to disobey God out there, and I know it exists in this far extreme realm of reality, I bet you that they're going to move it a lot closer. And, oh no, I might lose my job if I don't lie and get some forged paperwork to say I got something that I didn't get. Really? These people are going to resist the mark? These people who, when it's costing people their heads, are going to be people of integrity who hold it together? No, they've already made a mental path. They've practiced and prepared to be a people of compromise. Your job, really? Your job's more important than your God? Look, if I was facing losing my job over obeying God, I would choose to obey God and lose my job. Why? Because my God is able to take care of me. He could be Jehovah Jireh, right? He could take care of me and provide even if I didn't have my job. But even if he didn't, I'm still going to serve him. Even if it cost our life, we should still obey him. Do not make that path of compromise in your mind. Do not practice mentally the disobedience. Do not immediately, the second you come up to a commandment of God, think about how you can weasel your way out of it in some extreme, intense situation. Because when you think that there's a way to do it justly, and we can justify anything, people are very good with coming up with excuses. You know what, though? God doesn't need an excuse. God doesn't need an excuse. God has reasons. He doesn't need an excuse. When we make those excuses and justify whatever and give ourselves a green light somewhere, it's going to come in. We're going to open a floodgate. It's going to be like pulling your finger out of the dike. The whole thing is going to wash everything else away. Your integrity, your obedience, possibly your relationship. So walk in integrity, walk in obedience, be like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and say, look, I know this guy. My God can handle me, can see me through this situation if I'm obedient. But even if he doesn't, I'm going to be obedient, even if it costs me my life, if it costs me my head, if it costs me my job, if it costs me some level of my comfort. Who cares? Why? Because precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Even if it costs us our life, let's not give ourselves the green light anywhere to disobey. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, leave your excuses or, other things in the comment section. If it doesn't make sense, let me know why that wouldn't make sense. Nobody's making it out of here alive. You can die in integrity and obedience, or you can die in sin, rebellion, and compromise. The choice is yours. Be blessed. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.